Everyone, welcome back. So this time we're talking about our boundary conditions. These are the things that go next to your datum. So you have your feature control frame, it's got a symbol, it's got a tolerance value, and then it has those letters right here, and you're going to sometimes put symbols next to them. There you go. And there will be more next to that. Just go off the page here. Now, if you do not see that symbol, then it's considered to be regardless of material boundary. Now that's the default condition. So when we're looking at our surface here, it does not matter if it's all jiggity jaggedy. I just go as close as I can, and that's where I measure from. So I'm going to be like sitting it against something, and that's good enough. That's how I measure from. I go from this surface right here to whatever I'm measuring to. But we also have other material boundaries. There's the maximum material boundary. So what this says is, okay, there is a limit outside the material that a feature may extend to. And what does that mean? Well, it means this. Now, perhaps I have a block right here and I have the floor right here. It's always easier to see these kind of things through an example. And now I would normally, I'm going to sit my thing I'm testing on top of this, and I would move it to this side. However, here is what it's saying. Let's say that I'm holding it on both sides as I'm measuring it, and it would fit here if it was built perfectly, just like that. Everything is good and golden. Completely snug as a bug in a rug. But if we were regardless of material boundary, then even if it was smaller, well, I would just move this surface in. So it's still getting squished. But with the max material boundary, I always stay at the maximum size it can be. So as it moves away, as it gets smaller than its possible maximum size, it has room to wiggle back and forth, and it still can pass. You do this to give it as much tolerance as possible while still meeting its function. Now, how does this do that? I'm not going to explain that right now. What I'm meaning is just that it's what we do, and it is an extremely helpful tool. And we're going to really focus in on this later. For now, just remember that max material boundary, well, that is the circle with an M inside of it, and it's always next to one of your datums. Okay? And that is changing how we're holding it in place when we're testing it. Holding it in place when we're testing it. Now, the least material boundary it's honestly weird. I've never actually seen this used. Yes, I'm talking about a symbol that I've never actually seen used. I don't actually honestly know why you would. If you can find a good example of the least material boundary being used in a part, like a real part document, not just like in this class, I will give you a few points extra credit. Just find one. Prove me wrong. So what does it look like? Well, it's the L. It's always next to a datum in this particular case. And in this weird case, you're like, okay, well, other one was stuck at the max size. What about this one? Well, in this one, your datum is technically going from the least material boundary. So it is a very theoretical thing. You're always going to have this, like you can't have some sort of magical ghost wall here that you measure from. It doesn't work. But you are going to be acting like you're measuring from that least material boundary, even if that boundary is inside the material. The least material boundary is always inside the material, or at the very least, on the exact outside surface of it. If you've made your part as small as it can be, well, then here's your least material boundary. But as your part gets bigger, that least material boundary gets further and further inside your part. Now, it's never going to be this far inside your part. I'm exaggerating here. But it's going to almost always be inside the feature. So it's weird. It's one of the things that you can't physically hold. So when you're measuring things, you're just going to have everything completely gripped down. It's going to be completely measured in place. And you're going to measure from this theoretical point inside of the material. This class, we really won't have much use for it, but there's probably a use case for it somewhere. It's just not something that I've run into. Okay, so these are our boundary condition modifiers, okay? Our boundary condition modifiers. Either measuring from just whatever it is, doesn't matter, you clamp it down wherever it is. Or you clamp it down to a point, but it can wiggle around if it gets smaller. And finally, you're always clamping it down and you're actually measuring from somewhere inside the material. Now, last one is weird. I understand that. And we'll hit on all of these, pretty much except for the least material boundary, a lot as we go into future sections, especially if we get to orientation tolerances and further on. So thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.